When you think of Italy, what comes to mind? Probably ancient history, incredible food, maybe some deep-rooted family traditions. And you wouldn't be wrong, but that's really only half the story. What we're going to dive into is a nation caught in this huge, data-driven transformation, where all those old traditions are clashing with a massive wave of change. So, is Italy just this beautiful, ancient country that's kind of stuck in its ways? I mean, that's what a lot of people think, right? But the numbers, they paint a totally different picture. A much more dynamic, modern story. For starters, get this number, 30,000. That's how many old, totally outdated laws just got wiped off the books. And some of these dated back to before the Italian Republic was even a thing. I mean, talk about a spring cleaning. Italy is literally untangling itself from its own bureaucratic past just to move forward. And then there's the economy. In just the last 10 years, businesses run by immigrant entrepreneurs have just exploded, growing by more than 32%. So yeah, this is not a static economy. It's being completely reshaped by new energy. So what is really going on here? Okay, so first up, let's dig into the very bedrock of the economy. We're talking about the laws and the money people actually earn. All right, so here's a key number for you to hang on to. In 2022, the average gross annual salary in Italy was just over 37,000 euros. But you know how it is with averages. They never tell the whole story. And boy, are there some big gaps hiding behind this one.
And wow, this table really lays it all out. So you've got men earning around 6,000 euros more a year than women. If you're under 30, you're making a whopping 36% less than folks over 50. And your contract? Oh yeah, that matters a lot. Fixed-term workers earn almost 25% less. But here's the real kicker, education. A degree can mean you're earning over 43% more. That's a huge deal.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that gender gap for a second, down to the hourly wage. We're looking at 1680 euro for men and 1590 for women. Now, you might look at that and think, okay, less than €1 difference, what's the big deal? Well, it adds up to that 6,000 euro gap over a year. And part of what's driving it is that women are more likely to work part-time. So remember that crazy number, 30,000 laws? Let's go back to that. This wasn't just some small update. It was a massive undertaking to clean up a super bloated legal system. We're talking about rules and royal decrees from before the current constitution even existed. Getting rid of all that is a huge step towards making the country's bureaucracy actually work efficiently.
Okay, so you've got Italy clearing out all this old legal clutter. And what happens when you do that? You create space for new things to grow. And that's exactly what's happening, alongside a boom in all kinds of new businesses that are totally reshaping the entrepreneurial landscape.
And this right here, this shows the contrast perfectly. So on one hand, the total number of Italian businesses has actually dipped a tiny bit, down 1.7% in the last decade. But on the other hand, look at this. Companies started by foreign-born entrepreneurs, they've skyrocketed by almost 33%. They're now more than 11% of all businesses in the country. And we're not just talking about the usual sectors either. Construction and retail are still big, sure, but the real action, the explosive growth, is in these newer, more dynamic fields. Things like personal services, professional and tech activities, and even healthcare are seeing huge increases. It shows a much more diverse and skilled business scene emerging. And this whole transformation, it's not just happening in physical storefronts, it's happening online, big time. Just think about it. By 2025, Italy's e-commerce market is expected to be worth over 62 billion euros. That's massive. And you've got almost 90,000 Italian companies getting in on the action with their own e-commerce sites. Now, here's something that might surprise you. When you think Italy, you probably don't think video games, right? Well, maybe you should, because the industry there is absolutely booming. Turnover's way up, they've got 17% more people working in the industry, and company revenues have jumped almost 36%. It's a 2.4 billion euro industry now. Pretty incredible. Okay, so we've got all this crazy economic change happening. But what does it actually feel like for people living there every day? Well, this is where things get really interesting, because that's where you see the old ways and the new trends start to clash. Let's talk about something really fundamental, the home. For ages, the Italian dream was all about owning your own place. It was everything. But that's starting to change. More and more people are renting now, and not just because they have to. For many, it's a choice. It's about flexibility. And this chart breaks down exactly why. Sure, you've got about 44% renting their main home. But look at this. A huge chunk, over 31%, are renting for work, and another 21% for their studies. It just shows you how much more mobile and dynamic the population is becoming. But here's where it gets really weird. Even with all these people looking to rent and prices going up, there are almost 10 million homes in Italy just sitting empty. That's nearly 30% of all residential properties. It's this huge paradox that's creating massive challenges in the housing market. And a huge piece of this puzzle, as you might guess, is the short-term rental market. Think Airbnb. The number of listings has just gone through the roof. But what's really fascinating is who's actually making the money. A small-time host might pull in about 8,500 euros a year. But these large hosts, we're talking agencies managing a ton of properties, they're averaging almost 18,000 euros per property. It's becoming a really professionalized game. And this friction between old and new isn't just about housing. Take a look at the roads. They've brought in these new, much stricter road safety laws, and it's created a real culture clash. You know that classic Italian tradition of having some wine with your meal? Well, now that's bumping up against the very real fear of getting pulled over for a breathalyzer. It's actually hitting restaurants' wine sales and forcing the whole industry to adapt. All right, so let's wrap this up by looking to the future, because in the middle of all this change, there's one transformation that might be the biggest of them all: Italy's massive shift to a green economy. This is really shaping the next chapter. And check this out. This is a seriously impressive stat. Italy's economy is incredibly efficient. We're talking just 0.12 kilograms of CO2 for every dollar of GDP. To put that in perspective, that's way lower than the G20 average and literally half of what the United States produces. For a manufacturing powerhouse, that's amazing. And this whole green shift, it's creating an incredible demand for jobs. Get this number, 4.4 million. That's how many jobs businesses in 2024 were looking to fill that required green skills. That's more than 80% of all the new hires they were planning. The demand is huge, but finding people with the right skills is the next big challenge. So here's the bottom line. This green transition isn't just some nice environmental policy. It is completely rewriting the rules for Italy's job market and its entire economy. The future of work there is basically tied to sustainability. And that brings us right back to where we started. You have this country that's cleaning out its ancient legal closets, that's being energized by new entrepreneurs, that's going digital, and is leading the charge on a green future. But at the same time, it's wrestling with all the cultural growing pains that come with that change. So as this relentless wave of transformation keeps meeting deep-rooted tradition, what will Italy become next?